beautiful people. Welcome to the Dr. Joy Show, your prescription for total wellness, and I'm your host, Dr. Joy. Question for you. What does Barbara Walters, John Coltrane, Elvis Presley, Elizabeth Montgomery, Carl Jung have in common? Give you something to think about, because you know we're going to answer that question. But before we get started, we are going to do our 3 deep breaths. Are you ready? Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Last one. Inhale. Exhale. How do you feel? I know I feel great. Well, my guest, Rita Battat Silverman, will be able to answer that question, as she is the co-author with Dr. Abigail Brenner, and she's out of California. Dr. Abigail Brenner is a world-renowned psychiatrist, and she writes for Psychology Today. She actually has a blog, so you could go look her up. Welcome, Rita, to the Dr. Joy Show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for appearing here today to talk about this fascinating, underdiscovered topic of replacement children.
It affects a lot of people.
Now, what do people most think about it most?
People think that it is replacing a child who has physically died with another child. But, in fact, a child who comes into the family after a death is not automatically a replacement child. That's totally false and should not be called a replacement child. A replacement child can happen at any age. And it's not only because of a death, but it could be an accident. It could be the loss of a pregnancy. Mm-hmm. It's actually if a parent has trouble grieving for a loss, an emotional loss even, and they can't get on, they can't move forward, a lot of times the pain echoes within another child. And it's very unconscious, but a child tries to, or has the burden of, trying to make things okay in the family.
And so my question now is, Replacement Children, the Unconscious Script. This is your book, co-authored with Dr. Abigail Brenner.
It is.
What gave you the impetus to write this book?
Well, I didn't realize I was a replacement child. I
Really?
had never heard the word. And when my son was very young, I was having lunch with another mother, and she had one child, a girl, who was treated very different than her other 2 younger children. And, we always kind of wondered why, because it was the same parents. And she mentioned then that this child was not her first child, that her first child, in fact, had been a little girl, a little infant, and was diagnosed with leukemia when the child was 10 months old.
Now, did she treat her daughter, you said different,
Right,
but as a favorite, or?
Not as a favorite. She was very critical of this child. It was just that it was a very different dynamic.
Okay.
And I understood afterward what happened here, because it took a while to process this.
Right.
But it was the first time a little bell went off, because what happened is the doctor said, "You're going to lose this baby. Go home, get pregnant, have another child." And she wasn't ready. She had not really grieved the fact that this child was going to die. Mm-hmm. So what happened is she lost this child, and shortly afterward, her other baby was born. And she said, I wasn't ready. This isn't the child I knew. This isn't the child I wanted to come home with.
Right.
I was a very different mother. And I realized then that you can't be the same parent, where you are very excited and happy and self-sufficient. All of a sudden, your sense of self just goes bluey, They were grieving. They didn't have the same sense of joy, even though they very much wanted this little girl.
Right.
And so they were very uneven with her.
So replacement child or replacement children, the coined term, who developed it? Where did it come from?
Well, actually, the term was developed by these 2 psychologists in the 1960s. And it was a piece of a smaller, it was a small piece of a bigger study.
Right.
And they coined this, it's an actual syndrome.
Okay.
Okay, it's an actual psychological emotional syndrome. So it really is an experience of a child living in the shadow of a loss if the parents cannot kind of come to grips with it. It's what happens, and the child is burdened in a way, very unconsciously. It's not the parents' fault either.
Right.
There's no bad guy, good guy.
Right.
Everybody is swept into this cycle. And, we in the book, we're trying to make parents realize that they need help grieving, that this could happen, this can fall on the child just because they may not be able to be the same parent to even the older children.
Now, you stated initially when we first opened the show that this isn't just when a parent loses a child. What are some of the other scenarios, Rita, that this could apply?
In many ways, we have, one thing about our book, we have many different stories.
Right.
And so we have different scenarios.
Right.
And we have scenarios where there's a family that's, the kids are 11, 12, teenagers age, and all of a sudden one child starts getting into drugs and acting out.
Okay.
And the family becomes lopsided, and this girl in this story, and these are all true stories, all written by these people or interviewed by us, starts being Superwoman. Okay, she becomes like the person who's the saving grace in the family.
The one that was on the drugs?
No, because her brother is.
Her brother, okay.
So to make things not fall apart in the family, unconsciously, she becomes the person who does everything right. She wins swim meets, she does everything.
She's perfect.
Perfect.
Quote unquote.
And she
no one's
becomes a
perfect.
perfectionist.
Okay.
And later on in life, she has to understand what has happened to her, how she's become an enabler to a lot of people.
So her condition or her situation was a result of one of her siblings taking drugs?
Right.
Okay, so there was some kind of substance
like
abuse.
acting out.
Okay, so she was acting out. What's another scenario?
Another one is
not in terms of a story, but just a scenario.
Right, it could be like an accident.
Okay.
A child is totally disabled because of an accident, and then another child has to make up for it.
Okay.
Okay, that the twins. If
Okay.
a twin dies, like with Elvis Presley,
Right.
he was born with a dead brother.
Right.
And his mother always said he had to make up for his brother. That's
Oh,
why
geez.
he had this burning urge to succeed.
Right.
So, there's so many different scenarios with it.
So would adoptive parents fall into that category?
They can. You see, the thing is, we always say it's not instead of. If you're adding to the family,
Right.
okay, not instead of, but in addition to.
Right.
So, in other words, if somebody has a death in their family, like a baby, or a child dies, and then a baby's born,
Right.
okay, if they can, it doesn't matter. There's no timing that's right. If the family decides it's right for them to have another baby at the time, it's right for them. But they need to see the baby that's in addition to the family and not instead of the child that was lost.
Now you talk about this project, the Mourning and Familial Loss Project, in your book. How are the behaviors different?
Well, that's actually a good question for Dr. Branner.
And we'll have her on at another time.
Right.
Okay, so we'll table that. But let's talk about similarities and patterns discussed in the studies that you describe here, or even some of the scenarios. Maybe not the studies, but the scenarios. What is the thread, the common thread that runs through each of the scenarios, Rita?
Well, here's the thing. This exists on a sliding scale.
Right.
Some people will say, oh my God, I had so much going on because of the loss of my brother or sister. There was so much put on me.
Right.
And I know, what was going on. And because of that, I have survivor's guilt and I'm a perfectionist. Other people go, oh, this happened in my family. And I can understand why certain things are happening, but I don't feel it as much as maybe the person in point B feels it.
So what are some of the top characteristics that one would be able to discern in themselves if they fit into this particular category?
One is survivor's guilt.
Okay.
That they feel, even if they didn't know the other child, that they feel like, wow, why am I here and my brother or sister isn't?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I here and did I do something that caused this? Like Elvis Presley always felt like, worried that he may have caused the death of his brother. And it was totally unfounded. But a lot of this, that's why we call it the unconscious script.
Right.
Perfectionism is another one.
Okay.
A lot of times, if somebody adopts a child, okay, now a lot of adoptions are perfectly fabulous.
Right.
But if they have an idea in their head that my child is going to be just like this, and they adopt a child, and the child is different, okay, but they keep trying to make the child.
Trying to put a round peg in a square, a square peg in a round hole kind
Even
of thing.
if they're wonderful parents, but the child may feel, sometimes children take this on themselves, okay, that, they wanted this kind of kid and I've got to behave a certain way and be super person and accomplish everything right to fit into this family.
Well, okay, so another case, while I'm listening, I'm also thinking.
Another thing is people pleasing. That's a big one. Okay,
that they can't say no.
Right, they can't be themselves. That they have to. They're living under the shadow of somebody else.
But okay, so now let's take that point where you say people pleasing or they cannot be themselves.
Right,
Rita, do you know that's really how can I say that's everlasting into adulthood as a child.
Well, that's the whole thing.
Which will cause a person, if they cannot be themselves as a child, then they go through every stage in life, every chapter. Okay, so they're in elementary school, they can't be themselves. Now they're in junior high school, they can't be themselves. High school, after high school, whether it's college, post-grad, blah, 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 into adulthood, and they're functioning as adults in mainstream society, that is so impactful. And it could be not a good impact, not a positive impact, but a negative impact.
Well, that's why a lot of adult replacement children, people who are realizing this is what was taking place in their family, are becoming aware when they read the book. We have gotten such incredible feedback saying, oh my God, I didn't realize there was a name for this. This is what has happened to me. And it's becoming aware. So it's letting go of who you are not and becoming who you are. Actually, I have an example in this book, if I could read.
Yes, you can read the example, and then following that, I want to discuss the challenges for the parents.
Sure.
Okay, so you go ahead.
Well, the reason this is so good, this is written by a woman whose sister was run over before she was born.
Okay.
She was born right after. The father never got over it and kept trying to make her into the sister. Your sister loved ballet. Why don't you love ballet?
Right.
And it was really forced upon her.
Yes.
And she wrote this, and I think this explains everything so well.
It will be crystal clear for the, okay.
I think so. It says, until I was contacted for this book, I never understood that I had been telling myself I am a failure because I am not perfect. I am not like Jennifer. And I have convinced myself that being perfect is the price I must pay for being born. I have been through years of therapy with a very good therapist, but not once have we talked about Jennifer, except as one of the many tragedies in my life. We have talked about my fear and obsession with death, but in the context of me being afraid of failure. We've talked about how I was never listened to as a child, but not because I was always being looked at as someone else. I have gone over how my parents were well-meaning but unable to help me because they were dealing with their own grief after the loss of their child, but not how the loss of their child kept me from finding my identity.
You know what's really amazing about that story, and I have read the book, and I would endorse this book wholeheartedly. Everyone needs to read it. Is the fact that the person there that wrote that the author of that piece, they said that they have been to therapy, but it has never come up. Now, I'm going to fast forward, Rita, and I'm going to ask you if you and Dr. Brenner give guidance within the book for therapists.
We do.
Okay,
we
good.
do. We
All right.
absolutely do, because and therapists have been calling saying this has been so helpful, because usually they just say, how are you feeling? Okay, let's go through.
But that should be part of the assessment.
It should be, because the mother, when that child was born, may not have been the same mother with the other children.
That's right.
How were you what was happening? Were the parents in grief when you were born?
Right.
Was there an accident? Was there something that happened with another sibling?
Right.
What was going on at that time? And let's go back to that, because that's key. That's why this book is so important for anyone who deals with children, not only adult replacement children, but families who've lost a child, so they can become aware and cognitive of, wow, we may have to handle this a different way. And the parents need to get help, because the parents who have lost a child are survivors.
Right.
So, as I said, everybody's swept into the cycle.
And they sweep it under the rug. They
don't know it.
They don't know it. But the emotions are hidden, and then they surface at different times. What about when they're, so there's a daughter that exists, parents have a daughter, and then they have a set of twins, and one of the siblings has Asperger's or autism. Would that fall into the category?
It definitely can, because a lot of times in twins, it's very interesting with twins, because lots of times one twin who has a child, a brother or sister sibling twin who has autism, who is born dead, whatever, they feel they have to make up for it. Oh. They have to be twice that person, and we have that in the. We have
every
just
single
about
scenario.
Every single scenario.
Well, now that would explain why. That would explain why maybe the twin that doesn't have the challenge and the older
becomes
sister
a perfectionist.
Yeah, and they run at when they can. When I say when they run, I mean if they're 18, they decide to go to college away from the sibling that is dealing with the challenge, or gets a job far away.
Or it could work the other way, that they feel they have to be there to take care of the family.
Yeah, because it's added pressure for them. All right, so let's talk about, is this a question for you or Dr. Brenner, about the 4 stages of grief and forms of unresolved grief?
Well, that would be a good one for her to answer. You may want to save that for her.
Yeah, because that's going to be a part 2. So,
but I just want to say, everybody grieves differently.
Yes.
Okay, there's no time period that somebody gets over grief. You don't get over it. It's being able to move forward, and being aware how the grief is affecting your other children and what you can do for it, because parents need to be able to grieve. They shouldn't have to hide the grief, but they need to be very aware that they need to talk to their children, even little children. They need to say, look, I'm very sad, but you're going to be all right, and we're going to be all right, and we're always going to take care of you.
So how does the healing process begin for replacement children? We could talk about it from the parental space and then also from the child.
Well, I'll tell you, it's awareness. That's why we wrote the book. It's being aware that this has happened and what has come out of it for each individual.
Right.
Okay, that each individual is going to have something else to deal with. And say, oh, I now understand. Sometimes we've seen such forgiveness.
So it's that moment of recognition?
Recognition. That we've had, like, people who write something and they're very angry. We had one lady who was writing about how her father, just sort of ignored her, and she didn't understand it. And then after she started writing this and realizing what grief there was for him, she started to be able to forgive and talk to him. And they talked to him. What happened in that story, which is very interesting, this was a double whammy for her. The day she was born, he had been married before, and he had a 5-year-old stepson. The day she was born, the stepson died in another hospital.
I think I read that.
So,
my heart dropped.
It was very hard for him to connect to her.
Yeah.
And it was very, they went through a lot. And she was able to talk to him for the first time and understood what happened. And he was unable to understand that she felt rejected. And there was a real coming together. I mean, so, I'm very proud of things like that have happened because of the book.
Now, Rita, are there any positives that can come out of being a replacement child?
Absolutely.
And what are they?
Well, look at the famous replacement children.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I named some of them, and there's so many more in the
like
book as well.
Katharine Hepburn.
Yes.
All these people, but everybody that is a replacement child, of course, as I said, everything differs and it's on a scale. But resourcefulness, that they learn to live a life where they are recognized, where they do things maybe differently.
Right.
That I've seen a huge sense of strength with them and talents that come up. A lot of people in this book are real movers and shakers in their field. They may not be known, they may not be famous names, but they'll say, oh, well, I do this, and they're heads of this.
Yes.
But what happens is they are either kind of the movers and shakers of the world because they have to be, or
they have something. Do you think that is because they have something to prove?
I think so.
Okay.
I think they're trying to find their own individual selves, and not even realizing it. All this is very unconscious.
It is unconscious, but it also creates increased stress or internal conflict within
a lot of conflict
within the individual.
There's a lot of conflict.
Wow.
Yeah. And a lot of identity issues, wait a minute, why am I doing this? So I'm doing this because I was sort of forced into it because my brother or my sister was going to do it. I don't want to do it. This isn't me. This is like the passage I just read. She was doing a lot of things. She was forced into a lot of things. It wasn't her. And she felt she had to please the father. And the only way to please the father was being like her sister Jennifer. And now she's like, wait a minute.
She's in a box at that point. So I know you co-authored the book, Replacement Children, The Unconscious Script. You guys need to get it. Everybody should get a copy. And every psychologist and psychiatrist should have a copy.
And pediatrician.
Everybody.
The thing is, everybody either knows somebody. I mean, people read it.
I'm counting in my head how many people I know personally that would fall into the category. But now, how does one increase awareness? The book is here, but what's next?
Well, I think the book is a big thing because this was on the job training for us. Each story reflects something different, a different piece of being a replacement child or of what the family goes through. We learned so much because there's very little done on this. There's almost nothing.
And that is the reason why, and congratulations to you and Dr. Brenner, that you've won an award, right? Rita,
yes,
what is the award?
The award is an IPPY. It's independent publishing.
Congratulations.
Okay, thank you. And we won under mental health psychology.
Woo! That is a big deal. Now, so let's wrap up. And the way I want you to wrap up now is I want you to provide advice for parents experiencing the loss. What's your advice?
They need help. Don't be afraid to get help. Don't think you're handling it well because one day you will and the next day you won't. And you need to be very aware if there's children in the picture already or if you're planning on having children because it will affect future generations.
Right.
I mean, it's very important to be aware.
Okay. What about for parents who adopt?
It's the same thing. They need to see the child as their own individual person and know that they're coming into the family, they're joining in the family as their own person. They have to not have expectations. This is a little person who comes in with their own personality.
You said something that is very, very important. That's paramount. Not having expectations.
That's right.
And we do that subconsciously.
And again, with the adoption, you're bringing a child not instead of somebody else.
Right.
Okay, but in addition to your family.
In addition, in addition to. What about the adult replacement child that is trying to now gain their own identity? What advice do you have for them?
Well, again, it's awareness that they are a replacement child, what happened, and see the parents' point of view too, that, everybody was hurt. At some point, everybody was hurt.
So they should seek therapy after coming into
therapy, or they can talk to their parents and say, "I understand now." That's what has happened in a few cases in the book. That they really said, I understand my parents. They didn't mean to do this. This is what happened. I didn't understand what grief could do.
Right. Well, this book, like I said, Uncharted Waters.
It's the first of its kind,
It's
definitely.
the first of its kind. Congratulations on your award. And it touches, I mean, the Dr. Joy Show is about wellness, but total wellness. And this book here touches on physical wellness, emotional and mental, social, spiritual. I mean, so
it gets it all.
It hits a lot. It even touches on financial too,
Right.
because of the fact that if one is spending more time with a child that has a challenge, then more money may be spent in that
Right,
area.
and then the other child resents it.
And then, oh yeah, the other child resents it. Well, you're always spending time with them. Don't you care that I get A's too?
And when a parent is so overwhelmed, they don't know. I mean, this
Yeah.
is why it's good to have somebody be objective and say, let's talk about it. What problems are you having? And then lots of times you get to see it just when you're talking to somebody. It could be a counselor, it could be your best friend. But somebody who kind of helps you through the grief, lets you see things more objectively,
Right.
and allows you to understand what's happening in the family and to the children.
Rita, where can we find the book?
It's on Amazon now.
Okay.
And
Amazon.com. And where can folks contact you?
we have a website. I will give you the website. It's www.replacementchildren.com.
Oh, wonderful.
So,
Wonderful.
they can write in and they can write their stories.
Oh, that's great.
So,
that is really great. And I hope next time, because there will be a part 2, because there's a lot of questions that I would want Dr. Brenner to ask as well. Of course, you'd come back. I look forward.
She would love to be here.
I know.
As soon as she gets here from California.
Yeah, we'll get her in. But thank you for being a guest on the Dr. Joy Show. But before we close out, I have one thing that I want everybody to repeat. Viewers and you, Rita. And the one thing I want you to repeat is, after me, I am who I am.
I am who I am.
And it's great to be me.
And it's great to be me.
And no one can replace me.
And no one can replace me.
That's it. So I am who I am. It's great to be me. And no one can replace me. Until next time, be blessed, stay healthy. See ya.